Hey guys, alright, so I want you to complete the warm-up, and then after you've completed the warm-up, I want you to hit unpause, so complete the warm-up, hit pause to complete it, unpause when you're finished, okay? Don't unpause it until you're finished. Alright, so now you should be finished with the warm-up, you have answered all of it, and then now you're checking your answers, okay? So on number 1, all you were to do was to solve the following. So you have 10 to the 4th power. Well, I could do this in my head or I could do it in my calculator. So I'm going to go 10 to the 4th power. So that would be 10,000. Notice my exponent is a 4 and I have 4 zeros, right? 10 to the 3rd power, that's just 10 times 10 times 10. So that's 1,000. Notice my exponent's a 3. And I have how many? 3 zeros. There's a pattern. Do y'all see the pattern? 10 to the 2nd power is just 10 times 10. So that's 100. Notice I have 2 exponent of 2 and I have 2 zeros. So do y'all notice the pattern? 10 to the 1st power is just 10. My exponent's a 1. How many zeros do I have? Just have 1 zero. 10 to the 0 power. So if I extend my pattern, I notice that every time that my exponent's decreasing by 1, my number of zeros is decreasing by 1. Do y'all see that? Okay, so if my number of zeros is decreasing by 1 and I go from 10 to the 1st to 10 to the 0, how many zeros will I have in this one here? None. So my answer for 10 to the 0 is just 1. So 10 to the 0 power is equal to 1. All right? And so if you look at this other column here, notice that all of my exponents are negative. All right? So I have 10 to the negative 1st, 10 to the negative 2nd, 10 to the negative 3rd, 10 to the negative 4th. Well, I know that 10 to the 1st is 10, but because it's a negative number, I have to think what's going to happen to my number. So let's talk real quick about place value. So here's my ones place, right? So there's the 1 that I had right here. Y'all see that 1? Then I have my tens place, right? So there's my tens. So if I'm behind the decimal, that's the tenths place, right? And so I would write that as 0.1. Well, 0.1 is written as 1 over 10 as a fraction, okay? So, little note to self, the way we came up with our place value chart, you know, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, or tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, all of that came from these exponents right here, the way that we have our positive and negative exponents. So 10 to the negative 2nd power, well, 10 to the 2nd power is 100. So the way I would write hundredths would be 1 over 100. Okay? And then 10 to the negative 3rd, well, I know 10 to the 3rd is 1,000. But because it's a negative, it's going to be 1 over 1,000. And then last one, 10 to the 4th. I know 10 to the negative 4th, I mean 10 to the 4th is 10,000. So 10 to the negative 4th would be 1 over 10,000. So I hope you notice that all of your negative exponents flip your number to the denominator. Okay? All right, on number 2, it says, will the value of the expression be positive or negative? So A, negative 2 squared, what do y'all think, positive or negative? Okay, if you said positive, you are wrong. It's not right. Okay, so I know you're like, wait, what? Negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. Yeah, that's right. But there are no parentheses around this number. So if I would have had parentheses around that negative 2, then yeah, that would have been a positive answer. Okay? But there's not parentheses there. If you type this into your calculator exactly how you see it right now, -2 squared, no parentheses, nothing. If you type this into your calculator exactly how you see it, you're going to get a negative answer. You're going to get a -4. Okay? And let me tell you why. Because when we have a negative and we're squaring it, or we're taking it to the third power, we're taking it to the fourth power, if you don't have parentheses around the number and the negative sign, then what it's thinking is, like if I had this, what this means is I'm taking negative out to the side. It's like a -1 times 2 squared. That's what it actually looks like in your calculator if you were to type that into your calculator. That's how your calculator calculates that. So we have to put parentheses around it if you're meaning to square -2, because just -2 to the second power means I'm taking -1 times 2 to the second power. Well, 2 to the second power is 4. 4 times -1 is a -4. So that's why I get a negative answer. So again, if I don't have parentheses around that number that I'm squaring, then it is going to be negative. Okay, notice my exponent is a 2. It's an even number, so it's negative. On the second one, notice my number is inside parentheses this time, right? So I'm taking -2 times -2 times -2, right? How many -2's do I have? I have 3. So a negative times a negative is a positive. A positive times a negative is a negative. So this answer is going to be negative as well. Okay? And I really don't care what the answer is, but you have 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, so it'll be a -8 would be your answer. Okay? So notice how the exponent's an odd exponent. So typically when we have an odd exponent, your answer will come out negative. Okay? Most of the time when you have an even exponent, your answer comes out positive, but in this case, this is a different case because your base, the number that I'm squaring, or number that's being taken to the exponent, is a negative number without parentheses. Your answer is a negative. All right? All right, so today's, I gotta clear my screen. So today's lesson is all about exponents. So the reason I had that as your warm-up today was to help introduce us into the lesson. So write down this in your notebook for me. It says, I can simplify expressions involving 0 and negative exponents. All right, so write that down, pause the video, write it down, and then unpause when you're ready to keep going. All right, so 0 exponent. I want you to think back to the warm-up we had. When we did 10 to the first power and then 10 to the 0 power, do you remember that we said 10 to the first power was 10? Well, obviously, we know that. And then we noticed that there was a pattern, right? So when I went down to 10 to the 0 power, we said that that was an answer of 1, all right? So the rule is 0 exponent, anything, write this down, anything to the 0 power is equal to 1. That should be super, super short, sweet, simple, easy. Okay, anything to the 0 power is 1. I don't care what the number is. If it's to the 0 power, it's 1. So then, therefore, 4 to the 0 power, guess what, is 1. 27 to the 0 power, guess what, is 1. 0.99 to the 0 power, guess what, is 1. Yep. Anything, underline the word anything. Anything to the 0 power is equal to what? 1. Okay? Short, sweet, simple. All right, next we're going to move on to fractions. Not fractions, I mean negative exponents. Fractions is a different lesson. Negative exponents. So did you remember that when we had the 10 to the 0, we said that's 1. 10 to the negative 1, that became 1 over 10, right? So when you have a negative exponent, you have to flip the base to the opposite. Flip the base to the opposite, I can say place, I guess. And exponent, let me move my picture, becomes positive. So you're going to flip the base, and I put on there to the opposite place, okay? Because if your base is in the denominator and it's negative, then I'm going to flip it to the numerator. If it was in the numerator and it's negative, then I'm going to flip it to the denominator. So I'll do an example of like that for both of these, okay? So this first one I have negative 7 to the negative third power, okay? So first of all, what happens here is I'm going to flip it. So right now, this 7, I can write 7 as 7 over 1, right? So basically my fraction flips. So that becomes 1 over 7, right? But now this negative exponent becomes a positive exponent, okay? Because we can't have negative exponents in answers, so we have to always get rid of our negatives. To get rid of the negatives mean I have to flip my fraction, okay? It's kind of like taking the reciprocal of it. All right, so now I can simplify this, and so 1 over 7, well, I don't know what 7 to the third power is. I'm using my calculator. 7, and on your calculator you have this button. Looks like this little rooftop button right here. It's above the division key. That little rooftop button right there does your exponents, and it can be any exponent that you want. So I'm going to put it in a 3. So 7 to the third power, my calculator said, is 343. All right. So 7 to the negative third power is equal to 1 over 7 to the third power, which then simplified would be 1 over 343. Okay. Am I looking for decimals here? Absolutely not. So if I put this into my calculator as 7 to the negative third power, right? If I put that into my calculator, what did it do? Let me see. Did y'all see what it did? It gave you a decimal. So if you give me a decimal, I know that you used your calculator like that, and I know that I'm going to count it wrong. Okay? So just letting you know. On the second one here, I have negative 5 to the negative second power. So what's going to happen here is, because I have a negative exponent, I'm going to flip it. Negative 5 as a fraction is negative 5 over 1. So when I flip that, it becomes 1 over negative 5. And that exponent of negative 2 becomes a positive 2. Okay? So now I've got 1 over, forgot my parentheses. Remember, those parentheses are important. So I have 1 over negative 5 to the second power. And so that would be 1 over, well, negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. So positive 25, this is a negative times a negative, so it's positive 25. That is my answer, 1 over 25. All right.